Okay, we have three quick issues we're going to address. One is the sounding out of every word. Is that efficient or not? The next is misreading little words. And the last is what happens if you tag and change a word, the child still doesn't know it. So those would be the 3 points. We'll start with sounding out every word. Okay. When I went to New Orleans as a consultant, I was in a classroom and this teacher says, I want you to see phonics doesn't work. And I said, why not? She says, well, listen to this kid read. And the kid was reading and they were going the, b, at, w, n, t, I, n, the, k, a, b. And I paused and said, oh, by the way, let me show you something. You know, if you know the words, you don't have to sound them out. Well, what you the cab went into the v, at, and I sounded that word out because I didn't know it. But if I know the words, I don't have to sound it out. Now it's your turn. And he went, oh, the man went into the car. The car drove fine. Then it had some trouble with the g, as. Nobody had told him that you don't have to sound all the words. In other words, he looked at reading as a sounding out game because nobody had told them that the point of reading is to get to the text. So sounding out is an initial stage related to phonemic awareness, where the child is using the idea of the sounds and knowing the sounds and sounding out letters to access what's in their head. So they already know the word can and man and pan and pin and run, but they can't access it. So they have to use the sounding out to access that. Now, if their word form area is firing, and some kids who don't have dyslexia, their word form area fires pretty quickly at 6 months in first grade. If their word form area is firing right away, they're going to start memorizing words and they're going to not need to sound out at all. They're going to be going right into word phase. But the kids that have severity will need to be sounding out. Like they'll be going the and what. But the more they read, they'll start picking up some sight words. It'll be quicker. But my goal is to get them to move from the sounds to the syllable level. And we have what's called diagnostic syllables, where I time them in a list of 10 and try to get them to do those 10 syllables in 10 seconds or less if I can. So they'll go fit, wet, run, man, tug, as quick as you can. So they're now seeing a larger component. Then we move to 2-syllable words where they're reading a couple syllables, then multi-syllables. So the sounding approach of sounding out each letter is a beginning approach to access words in their head. And also it's a trigger approach to trigger the word form area. But our goal is definitely not to stay there. In fact, when we're in our first grade series, Ocean Fun, I am hoping that by the 3rd or 4th closed syllable book, they're now starting to read the closed syllables, not sounding them out, but starting to read them as whole syllables. That's where we want to get. So it's a step. It's, you know, you got to crawl before you walk. Well, kids got to sound out words unless they have an unbelievable sight word memory and they have trouble with auditory. Many of them will just learn by sight. There are kids that do that. Okay. But our goal is to move from the sound stage to move pretty quickly, if we can, to the syllable stage, then in the multi-syllable stage. So it's a stage.
I have a quick question about that. So the teacher also was saying that the students should get really smooth, stop sounding out before they go to any other higher level of phonics than like CVC. What do you think about? I know that you want them to be reading 40 words per minute in a book before they move on. But well, in my opinion, if they know they have some, if they don't have to stay there forever until they're smoothly reading, do they?
No.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Well, number one, whoever is addressing you may not be dealing with phonetic books anyway. They may not, in other words, our system is set so that we have multiple closed syllable books in Tells of Youth. And we also have some in Carnival, so that a child who's sounding out words, and now again, let's go back. At the end of kindergarten, you want to be, between 40 to 50 words. End of first grade, 70 words per minute. End of second grade, 90 words per minute. But we'll often get kids who are starting at Tells of Youth at like 30 words a minute. So we'll get more efficient and tells a youth, and they may get to 40. Then we move to sick, which is like tells a youth, and get them going, and they may stay at 40. Then we move to camping, which is again closed syllable, and they may move to 50. I mean, we're moving, ratcheting up the difficulty. At the same point, we're doing repeated readings and working on fluency, and the two are going hand in hand. Now, if we get stuck in fluency, where they're staying at 20 words a minute, we'll move over to a parallel series like Carnival, which has easier books, and read some more closed syllable books, maybe in Carnival, okay? I did that with a student who's having trouble with diphthongs. And we were in French Quarter, we were in LA Raptor. And then we read Martian Raptor. He still had trouble. So then we moved over to Sunlight Tales, and we read a diphthong book there, Voyage, and still struggled. So I then went over to Tales of Adventure, and we read a diphthong book. And then we moved ahead. So we can move sideways if a child's stuck. But generally, the way that it works is if we're working repeated readings and pressure release, their fluency is going up a little as they're moving up in the books. Now, if you have big jumps in the books, that would be a mistake. So therefore, I'd want to know what series are you dealing with? What book? Let me look at the books that, the comment on that. Because yeah, she'd be right. If you were working with closed syllables and then you move to a diphthong book, well, that would be a mistake. But when you have a book that's moving slightly ahead, then for the most part, it works. If it doesn't, we move to another book that's dealing with those issues. Does that make sense, Kathleen?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, at what point would you want the student to be not sounding out anymore, at what concept? Because I think they do it all the time with certain words,
Well, yeah, they do. I have, kids that are good readers. Well, that's the whole point. By the way, your best readers also sound out. What they do is, from my movement studies, we used to think they read past a word to guess it. That's what whole language said. We know that's not true. They parse it into syllables. So the sounding out is subvocal, but they are breaking words down very quickly with their eyes. So sounding out is a valuable tool. But my point is, for fluency to increase, you got to do less of that and start reading syllables. And that's kind of a natural state, that we should get to. And the diagnostic syllables is one way we get there, by timing them and diagnostic. Also, the TNT. I tested a kid the other day who did terrible on the TNT, who I'd worked with. He got 11 right in 3 minutes. And so today I went back to the list and we just took our time and he aced it, just aced it. It was just the stress of it. He's tired and won't do as well, but he just nailed it right down the list. And that's another thing you got to be aware of kids, that when they get tired, their processing totally collapses and their speed collapses, their errors increase. But yeah, our goal, Kathleen, as you move through the program, is you're doing less sounding out, you're starting to gather some sight words, and your fluency is improving, and you sound out the words you don't know. Okay.
I don't know. Am I interrupting you? Are there some people who believe in teaching dyslexic students through a whole language approach? Have you ever heard of that?
Well,
because I think that
there are whole language people that believe in teaching everybody whole language, and that it's a waiting game. That, in other words, if you give them a little time, they'll grow out of it. There's that belief. And the fact is, since they don't see the kid again, they might think he grows out of it, because they had him in first, second grade. You don't see him at fifth grade when he never grew out of it. But there are some that operate from that view. Okay. Now, there is support for that in some of the Swedish studies, et cetera, where they start reading a little later, like 9. And all that's telling you, since they're starting reading later, some of the kids get more time to develop. But with a child with dyslexia, that doesn't matter. But, with some kids, it allowed them to get a little more time to develop and the reading comes quicker. But in reality, that approach, sight word, has been totally, what would I say, discounted, and no longer is looked at as valid at all. But you will have diehard whole language people who will state that.
You're seeing on various Facebook boards of people talking about what essentially are sight word programs. They don't work very well for kids with dyslexia.
There's a sight word program. I'm not going to mention names because God knows where this is going to go. There's a program that had a couple. One was a phonetic program, and one is more of a sight word program with some phonics. Okay. I've worked with kids from both systems. The phonetic group who went through 100 or 200 hours in this program were all start fours. In other words, they knew the program, and I could put them in a higher book. Those who went through the sight word program 102 hours were all start twos. In other words, number one, they didn't remember most of the sight words, and two is their phonics didn't develop. It was night and day with this program, night and day. Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
move on. Hey, Steve, can you refocus your camera so we can see you better, please?
Sure.
Thank you.
All right. Question number 2. Little words. Okay. Little words are a problem because many times there's no context for it. Kids who have dyslexia or have trouble reading are always using context. They're guessing from the title of the book, the pictures, the shape of the word. Not so much the shape, but they're really guessing from the pictures or anything they can get the first letter, they're guessing. And since little words don't have a lot of context, they just make them up. Okay. Of, the, etc. So what I do when I take over, I leave out the little words and make them fill it in. So when I take over, let's say I'm doing the echo drill, and I'll take over, they went, I might leave out the word to. So I might go, he went, and then I'll leave out to and make him read to the school. Or when I just take over and do the fill-in drill. The fill-in drill is where I read, they read silently and fill in the word. So I'll go, he went, and I'll leave out that word, and they got to go to the car, and went, and I'll leave out the next word. They have to put an in. They have to fill in the little words, and that's the context drill or fill-in drill. So remember on the Zoom, because of the 1 second lag, we can't do the pressure release where we read together and we're reading and then leaving out a word. We kind of do the phrase technique first, where we'll phrase, they'll phrase, we'll phrase, they'll phrase, and then we'll do the fill-in drill where we'll read and they'll fill in words. So, but those who have trouble with the small words, I'll do a little more of the fill-in drill where I will leave out the small words. Also, list 1 of TST is full of those little words that they have trouble with. Okay, let me get that up and I'll show you. TST is, or TNT, the Tatum Nonsense Test. Oops. I mean TST, the Tatum Sight Word Test. So, and the Tatum Sight Word Test, if you'll look at these words, these are a lot of the words they leave out. Okay, the little words. So, and with this, you can just daily read these, you know, before you read, you go ahead and have them read these here. And, you know, I'll start out with a little form of orthographic processing where I'll go to, let's tap it out, ooh. Good. What's the hard part? Well, there's O, kind of weird. Good. That's not what we got to remember. I might underline that hard part using the annotation. I'll go to annotation and I'll put first. So yeah, here's our hard part right there. Ooh. Here. What's the hard part in here? Well, ear. This part right here is kind of strange if you don't know the silent E. So I'll underline it. Yeah, the ER, E is maybe the hard part. And for reading, I'll just go ahead. We'll tap it out here. Here. What's the hard part? Good. And then we'll read these two and here. And so any day before we read, we'll just go ahead and start reading these sight words. You, we'll tap it out first. Let's look at you. Yeah. Ooh. What's the hard part? Well, they don't know yellows yet. So here's the hard part, the OU, right? So that has kind of an ooh sound. So what does that say? You. Let's go back and read these. What was the hard part here? Go ahead. Two, here, and you. So just for a minute before we read each day, we might do these small words and practice them. Because these are really a lot of the ones they're having trouble with. Okay. The next group, which is first, second grade sight words. By the way, this is taken from Shaywitz's list of the 150 words you need to know. But what I did is I took out the real sight words out of that 150, because probably about 100 of those words are really phonetic words. So I took out the real sight words for kids to work on. And then after we've done like list 1 and 2, we'll then start working timing on the 150 that's in the lessons book. But I found that these are the sight words they really have trouble with. Like was, they want to call saw. Now, why do they do that? Well, let's see. What's another one? There's another one they all do. But anyway, the reason is letters don't come in connected. They come in kind of a random order in your occipital lobe, and then they're rearranged. And the more familiarity you have with text, the more the letters will start gluing together. And so initially, though, when they're coming back there, you're not necessarily seeing them in order. So again, with was, I'd say, let's tap it out. What's the hard part? Well, this part right here. That's right. That's the hard part. Was. Okay. So let's go back and read the words you got. To, here, you, come, was. So you can, add a few of these every once in a while and do this for a minute before you read. That's another. So combination of this with reading and leaving out the little words when you do the context or fill-in drill where you're reading and they're filling in the word. I often use the filler drill for them to sound out a word. So like I did it today with a student, and word would be like, we had to, and I left out maintain. So he had to swing in and read maintain. We had to maintain the tough work that was, and then I left out the next word. And he had to go required. So when I leave out the word, I often leave out words I want them to sound out or work in. But if they have a little word problem, those are good to be left out. That's a good way to approach it. Questions on that?
I have a question. Do you time them on these after they get to know them, or?
Yeah, once you say no 10, you could time them and try to improve your time. Sure. You should be able to read 10 real words in 10 seconds at some point. Normally 10 anything, 10 syllables or 10 words usually kids will start like 25, 30 seconds. But once they're getting under 20, that's good. 15 or less is really good, and 10 or less is great. Okay. So, I mean, really what we want is to, here, you, come, was, are, the, into, one, have. It's like 5 seconds. That's what we want for sight words. Okay. You can also have the kids, if they're having trouble, copy the word and say it. To, here. Okay. But many of the kids who have trouble writing. But if they don't have trouble with writing, you can have them copy it as well. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions with that, Alexandra? Does that?
I have something to ask. So I was working with a 5th grader who either omits those words or says whatever word she wants instead. And when I did the tracking and then paused for her to read it, I think because of the delay of the computer or her distraction or whatever, it didn't really work well. And what worked better for me was to do kind of phrase reading where I would read up until the little word, and her phrase would start with that little word.
Did it work?
It worked better. I don't know.
It works.
I mean,
yeah,
no.
That's fine. Yeah, whatever works. You know, it's the principle is to focus on the little words for those missing it one way or another. That's kind of the principle. But it's just basically they're used to guessing with little words because there's not a context, not like car, where we drove a, or we write in a, well, car, there's context, but in there's not, at the, of the, you know, so that's why they're used to guessing. Okay. Third point, kids that are working word attack and using the two most important parts of our program, the Vowel Tag and Vowel Change, and not getting the word. Okay. So. Okay, hold on here for a minute. All right. I'm going to have to go to my lessons book for this. Okay. So I'm going to get to the lessons. I'll go to concept where this is shown. Concept 9. All right, cool. Okay. So you'll have kids when they're reading. And again, when I get kids who are doing well in the program, usually around Vowel Tag, Vowel Change, rather than doing the reading words on the board, I will often just go right here, enlarge it, because I can get double the amount of words done, okay? So we're gonna go to annotate. No, actually, I don't even do that, annotate, I just do this. Okay. So we're gonna tag this word first, right, Alexander? And the word is camel, okay? So the child knows what a camel is. So we don't have to change it. If they'd never heard of camel, we'd have to change it. Now let's go to the next word. Raven. Well, they've never heard of that. So I'd say, well, let's change it. Raven. Never heard of that. It's now a vocab word. And that means you can do lots of things with it. You can write it down. If it's an important word, you can write it down in a notebook or in a file. You could even look it up. If you're doing English as a second language, you could even go real quick and show what a raven looks like. But it's now a vocab word. You could put it down and draw a little picture next to it in the manual, okay? So this word, comment. Well, that's a real word. They don't know it. They never heard of it. That's now a vocab word. So we could write comment down and draw a little picture of a comet with a tail, or we could go to the internet and show a little picture of that, or we could just write it down and put a couple word definition. It just depends what works for you. Basin, not a word. Basin, a lot of kids won't know what a basin is, okay? So again, it's now vocab. So when you're dealing with English as a second language, you're gonna run into more of that. So you're gonna be writing words down, like in a dictionary, you'll be writing words down with maybe a little picture on it or something for you to review before you do the lesson of vocabulary as you're going through the story. You're also going to be doing, with my books before you read, you'll be going to the cover and talking about the cover, trying to use the words that are coming up in the story. So you look at the words coming up in the story, and as you're describing the cover, you'll say, okay, and there is a meteor, and it's gonna hit an area, a basin, which is this crevice in the ground. It's gonna hit this basin. And and notice there's a raven over there on this tree. See that little bird over there? It's a raven. And so you try to use the language with the picture. Then you go to a picture in the chapter and again, try to use some of the languages that's coming up on the book with the picture. And that will help with the ESL kids because you've mentioned the word timid yeah, that boy was scared when the meter came. He was pretty timid, pretty shy about this whole thing. So that when they see the word timid, they'll remember it. And he was a cadet. Notice he's got the hat on, he's from the military. And so when they see the word cadet, they'll have it. So you can kind of prepare them for words to come by doing oral work with the pictures and talking about the pictures. And if you want to, you can do the 4-step method with the picture, where after you've discussed the picture, you can say a word. You can point to the picture and they read it. I can say a word and have them find it. I can give a definition, and then I can randomly point to them. So just kind of like the 4-step method, where initially they read the word. Well, at the picture, I initially have them read the picture. What is that? It's a raven, it's this. And then I'll say it, they'll find it, I'll give a definition, then I'll randomly point. You can do that as well. Just depends. With ESL, you're going to be doing much more oral work, and it's going to go slow. With ESL, you might, yeah, it's just going to be a slower process. And because you're dealing with teaching them language, English, as well as reading. Okay.
Okay. Sometimes I use to translate, not to describe the word, because children are in, they don't know English, so I have to ask them to read the word in English that I say in Italian.
Gotcha. Good. That's
So-
perfect. That's perfect. Yeah.
So I use picture and I use Italian, and I have to choose the word in English.
Good. That's perfect. That's
Okay.
great. Yeah. It's just a matter that the English words are not in their linguistic competency up here. And so, and with some kids, it's going to take a while. Other kids are gifted linguistically and can pick it up pretty quick. But I do know one of the criticisms of a lot of the phonics programs is that you'll have kids who can come out reading, but they don't understand a thing because there was no comprehension done, or there was no language. They just learned how to decode, but it didn't, they can't, still don't understand anything. That's why you got to go a little slower go with the program. Okay. All right. So we answered the 3 questions. Anything else come to mind before we move on?
I'm using with this girl the reading in Italian to do the don't remember the because she can understand, and so she can read the phrase and not just do you think, and not just the words, and she can understand what she's reading and going to work with multisyllable words better, and get a phrasing. Do you think that is a problem to do half a lesson in English and half a lesson in Italian sometimes? So I do 5 lessons a week and 3 all in English, but 2 in Italian, because she can read multisyllable words and difficult passages, and do the fluency in Italian.
Yeah. Well,
Do you think that this could be a problem, or?
well, it does help. If you have the same passage in English and Italian, is that what you're saying? Same passage?
No, they are different, because in Italian we have more multisyllable words than in English. And so every passage is difficult for her, because she has to do the syllable tracking in Italian. And now she's very good to read in Italian, but she can see the full stops and the commas, and she read like a computer. And so in English it's difficult, because she can't understand all the books. I have to translate, and so I'm using some books in Italian because I want to make her a beach reader. So I give her an Italian book, and so for 2 lessons in a week, I do reading in Italian.
Good, it's a great idea. Because what you're talking about is reading with expression,
Yeah.
and
Okay. Reading with expression.
reading with prosody, etc. And to be quite honest, she's in an interpreted stage in the English books and may stay there her whole life. She may not be fluent, but we want to get her fluent in her own language so she understands. No, that's absolutely good pedagogy.
With an older boy, I do the fluency because he can understand.
Yeah.
And
right.
so we use books for children, and even if he is 15, and he can do it.
Yeah, good, perfect. Yeah, prosody and expression and those kind of right hemisphere things require the ability to understand the subtleties of the language. So you're much better doing that in Italian. Absolutely. If they're still at the sounding out phase in English. Absolutely. Because again, in English, they may never become real fluent readers. They may get to the point where they can decode. So when they come to America, if they come or they go somewhere, they can decode certain signs and read it, but nobody's timing them. They can take their time. So there's kind of different goals there. If they can become fluent in English, so much the better. But, right.
Yeah, but they become more fluent than the classmates. And so they are better than the classmates in reading now.
It's great. Any other questions? Okay. All right. So I'll turn it over to you, Steve. It's great seeing everybody. It's a good session.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.